I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the soft glow of a lamp casting eerie shadows on the walls. The faint hum of the air conditioner was the only sound that dared to break the silence, a reminder that I was the sole inhabitant of the house for the night. My parents were out of town, leaving me alone in the old family home, a place that had always felt warm and familiar, but now seemed strangely alien in the darkness. The silence seemed to stretch and twist, each creak of the floorboards echoing with an intensity that set my nerves on edge. I tried to shake off my unease, reminding myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I glanced towards the hallway leading to the bedrooms, a shiver ran down my spine. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, its shadows deepening into an abyss that seemed to swallow the light. With a nervous chuckle, I picked up the TV remote and turned on the news, hoping that the voices and sounds from the screen would offer some respite from the solitude. The anchor's voice filled the room, and for a moment I felt a sense of normalcy returning. But then the picture on the TV flickered, the sound distorted into an eerie garble. I furrowed my brow and glanced at the TV, a sense of foreboding settling over me. The screen showed a distorted image, a figure, its form obscured by static, standing in the middle of a forest. My heart raced, and I fumbled for the remote, trying to change the channel. But the figure remained, its presence a haunting intrusion into my solitude. I turned off the TV in frustration, the room plunging into darkness once more. The silence seemed to intensify, a weight that pressed against my ears. I stood up, my footsteps echoing as I walked towards the kitchen, the floorboards creaking in protest with each step. As I reached for a glass from the cabinet, a soft whisper reached my ears. My heart froze, and I turned towards the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. The whisper seemed to linger in the air, its words incomprehensible yet laden with a sense of urgency. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response came, only the echoing silence that seemed to mock my fear. I stepped back, my eyes fixed on the hallway, my mind racing with thoughts of intruders and the unknown. With a sudden surge of courage, I moved towards the hallway, the floorboards creaking beneath my feet. I strained to hear any sound, any indication of another presence. But the silence remained, the air heavy with anticipation. I reached the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest, and cautiously peered down its length. The darkness seemed to press in on me, the shadows shifting and twisting as if they held secrets waiting to be revealed. And then, a soft light, a glow that seemed to emanate from one of the rooms. I moved towards it, my steps hesitant, my hand outstretched to push open the door. The room was bathed in a soft ethereal light, the source inexplicable. But it was not the light that held my attention. It was the figure standing by the window, its form partially obscured by the glow. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice a mixture of fear and curiosity. The figure turned towards me, its face coming into view. It was a face that I knew, a face that should not have been there. It was my grandmother who had passed away years ago, her expression serene and otherworldly. "Remember?" she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. I stumbled back, my heart racing, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. My grandmother had always been a source of comfort, a presence that had watched over me. But now, her presence felt like an intrusion, a reminder that the boundary between the living and the dead was not as distinct as I had once believed. As I stood there, a mixture of fear and wonder filling me, my grandmother's form began to fade, the light around her diminishing. The room returned to darkness, the shadows once again dancing on the walls. I walked back to the living room, the events of the night swirling in my mind. The house seemed to have taken on a new dimension, a place where the boundaries of reality and the unknown intersected. And as I settled onto the couch, the silence around me seemed to hold 1,000 whispers, a reminder that even in solitude, the echoes of the past can make their presence known. I stood at the window, my breath fogging up the glass as I peered out into the darkness. The street below was deserted, the houses shrouded in shadow. It was a tranquil scene, but an inexplicable unease had settled over me. My parents were away for the weekend, leaving me alone in our cozy suburban house. The silence seemed to amplify in their absence, the tick-tock of the clock echoing through the rooms. I tried to shake off my apprehension, telling myself that it was just the unfamiliarity of solitude that was playing tricks on my mind. I wandered into the kitchen, the cold tiles underfoot sending a shiver up my spine. I opened the fridge, the soft hum of its motor a comforting presence. I pulled out a leftover slice of pizza and headed to the microwave, trying to distract myself from the growing sense of isolation. As the microwave beeped and the pizza rotated on its plate, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned towards the window, my heart skipping a beat. In the dim light, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the yard, a silhouette that seemed out of place against the backdrop of darkness. My pulse quickened, my mind racing as I tried to rationalize what I had seen. It must have been a trick of the light, a shadow cast by a passing car or a swaying tree branch. I chided myself for letting my imagination run wild, for letting my nerves get the best of me. I grabbed the plate from the microwave and turned off the kitchen light, deciding to retreat to the safety of my room. The floorboards creaked underfoot as I walked down the hallway, the sound sending a shiver down my spine. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden menace, every rustling of leaves outside a potential threat. I closed the door to my room and sat down on the bed, trying to push aside my growing unease. I turned on the TV, hoping that the sound of voices and the distraction of a show would help calm my nerves. But even as I watched, the feeling of being watched persisted, a weight on my shoulders that I couldn't shake. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows and I jumped at the unexpected noise. I glanced towards the window, my heart racing as I saw movement once again, a shadow that seemed to cross the glass. My breath caught in my throat as I realized that there was no logical explanation for what I was seeing. With a pounding heart, I stood up and walked towards the window, my hands trembling as I pulled back the curtain. The yard outside was empty, the moonlight revealing nothing out of the ordinary. But the feeling of being watched remained, an unseen presence that seemed to permeate the air. I turned away from the window, my mind racing with thoughts of the impossible. Was I truly alone in the house? Was there something lurking just beyond my line of sight, a specter that defied explanation? As I sat back down on the bed, a soft whisper, a breath of air that seemed to come from nowhere, reached my ears. My heart raced, and I strained to hear it again, to decipher its source. But the whisper was elusive, its words unintelligible yet laden with a sense of urgency. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer came, only the silence that seemed to close in around me. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, the sensation that I was not alone growing stronger by the second. And then, with a sudden jolt, the lights flickered and went out. I was plunged into darkness, my heart racing as I fumbled for my phone, its faint glow providing a feeble source of light. As the light from my phone cast eerie shadows on the walls, I realized that the feeling of being watched was no longer a mere figment of my imagination. Something unseen, something otherworldly was in the room with me, its presence a haunting intrusion into my solitude. I backed towards the door, my phone's light trembling in my hand. The air felt heavy, charged with an energy that sent shivers down my spine. I didn't know what to do, where to go. All I knew was that I was not alone, that there was something in the darkness, something that defied explanation. With a burst of adrenaline, I reached the hallway and stumbled towards the front door, my heart pounding as I fumbled with the locks. The door swung open and I raced outside, the cool night air a welcome relief from the oppressive atmosphere of the house. I stood on the porch, my breath ragged, my heart slowly returning to a more normal rhythm. As I looked back at the house, the lights inside flickered back on, casting a warm glow through the windows. But the feeling of being watched, of an unseen presence, still lingered in my mind, a reminder that even in the safety of my own home, there are forces beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows and waiting to reveal themselves when the world slips into darkness. The hospital stood like a sentinel in the night, its windows dark and its halls silent. I stood at the entrance, the moon casting an eerie glow on the faded sign that proclaimed St. Joseph's Hospital. It was a place that had once been a beacon of healing, but now it stood abandoned, a relic of the past, its walls holding secrets that time had forgotten. A chill settled over me as I stepped inside, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic and decay. The floor echoed with the soft tap of my footsteps, the sound seeming to carry through the silence like a drumbeat. The walls were adorned with peeling paint and crumbling plaster, a testament to the passage of time and neglect. The hallway stretched before me, its length seemingly endless. I walked cautiously, my steps hesitant as I ventured deeper into the heart of the hospital. The echoes of distant memories seemed to dance along the walls, whispers of patients and doctors that had long since departed. As I explored further, I came across a room with a partially open door. A room that seemed frozen in time. The bed was neatly made, the sheets pristine despite the layers of dust that covered them. The chair beside the bed was empty, as if waiting for a visitor who would never come. A sense of unease settled over me, as if the room itself held a weight, a residue of the emotions that had been felt within its walls. I hesitated, my gaze fixed on the room, before finally mustering the courage to step inside. The air seemed to grow colder as I entered the room, a shiver coursing through me. I looked around, my breath catching as I saw a figure standing by the window, a figure that seemed to flicker in and out of existence, as if it was a mere phantom of the past. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible in the stillness. The figure turned towards me, its features obscured by the shadows. It seemed to sway slightly, as if caught in a current of air that I couldn't feel. I took a step back, my heart pounding, the realization sinking in that I was not alone in the room. The figure reached out towards me, its hand outstretched as if seeking something. Comfort, connection, understanding. I watched, frozen in place as its fingers brushed against my arm, a touch that sent a shock of cold through me, as if its presence had reached beyond the boundaries of the physical world, and then with a sudden movement the figure dissipated, its form fading into the air like mist. The room grew still once more, the silence pressing in around me, the weight of the encounter lingering like an echo. I stumbled out of the room, my heart still racing, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. The hospital seemed to pulse with a hidden energy, as if the memories and stories of those who had walked its halls were woven into the very fabric of its existence. As I left the hospital behind, the moonlight guiding my way, I couldn't shake the feeling that the past was not truly gone, that the hospital's abandoned halls held the traces of lives that had once been, and that their echoes continued to resonate in the stillness. The hospital had become a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred, a reminder that the past is never truly left behind, and that the stories of those who came before us continue to linger, waiting to be heard by those willing to listen. The office was a stark contrast to its daytime hustle and bustle, transformed by the late hour into a desolate expanse of cubicles and empty workstations. The overhead lights buzzed softly, casting a sterile glow over the rows of desks. I sat alone at my workstation, the glow of my computer screen illuminating my face as I typed away, lost in the rhythm of work. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, each second a reminder that the outside world had grown still. The distant sounds of traffic had faded into the night, leaving behind a haunting silence broken only by the tap-tap of my keyboard. It was an unfamiliar solitude, the office transformed into a quiet sanctuary of productivity. As I focused on my tasks, a chill swept through the air, as if the temperature in the room had dropped several degrees in an instant. I glanced up, my heart skipping a beat as I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement at the end of the aisle. My breath caught in my throat as I turned my attention to the empty space beyond my desk. The glow of the overhead lights seemed to dim slightly, shadows deepening as they crept towards me. The sense of being watched settled over me, a weight that I couldn't shake off. I tried to rationalize the feeling, attributing it to fatigue or the isolation of the hour, but the unease persisted, tendrils of fear winding their way into my thoughts. With a shaky exhale, I returned my focus to my computer, the soft glow of the screen providing a semblance of comfort. But even as I typed, my fingers stumbling over the keys, I couldn't shake the feeling that the office was not as empty as it appeared. A faint sound, a whisper barely audible, reached my ears, a voice that seemed to come from just beyond the edge of my perception. My heart raced and I looked around, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. But the office remained empty, the shadows cast by the desks dancing in the periphery of my vision. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice quivering with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. No response came, only the silence that seemed to stretch and twist, a void that held secrets just out of reach. I strained my ears, my senses heightened by the anticipation of the unknown, and then, with a sudden jolt, a gust of wind swept through the office, extinguishing the overhead lights in an instant. I was plunged into darkness, the glow of my computer screen the only source of light. Panic surged through me, my mind racing as I fumbled for my phone, its soft illumination casting eerie shadows on the walls. As the light from my phone painted eerie patterns on the empty desks, I felt a presence that seemed to hover just beyond the light's reach. I turned towards the end of the aisle, my heart pounding in my chest, and saw a figure, indistinct and fleeting, moving through the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the darkness. The figure continued to move, its form shrouded in mystery. It seemed to glide rather than walk, its movements smooth and fluid, as if it was not bound by the laws of the physical world. A chill swept through the air, raising the hairs on the back of my neck. With a burst of adrenaline, I stood up, the light from my phone trembling in my hand. I took hesitant steps towards the figure, my heart racing, my mind a whirlwind of fear and curiosity. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure dissolved into the darkness, leaving behind an echo of its presence. The overhead lights flickered back on, bathing the office in their artificial glow. The silence returned, the whisper of the night's encounter still echoing in the air. I stood alone in the office, the events of the night swirling in my mind. The solitude that had once seemed peaceful now held an unsettling edge, a reminder that even in the most familiar of places, there are mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And as I gathered my things and prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that the office held secrets, shadows of the past that continued to haunt its halls long after the workday had ended. The store stood before me, its shelves lined with products that had long lost their luster. The entrance chimed softly as I pushed open the door, the sound echoing through the empty space. I stepped inside cautiously, the air heavy with dust and the scent of forgotten merchandise. The overhead lights flickered and hummed, casting a pale glow over the rows of shelves. The store was a cavern of solitude, each aisle a quiet expanse of loneliness. I wandered through the aisles, my footsteps the only sound that dared to break the silence. The shelves were filled with items, their packaging faded and worn, as if they too were a part of the forgotten past. I moved through the store, my curiosity driving me forward. The familiarity of the place clashed with the sense of abandonment that hung in the air. It was as if the memories of bustling shoppers and the laughter of children were etched into the walls, waiting to be rekindled by a visitor's presence. As I turned into a new aisle, a sudden chill settled over me, a sensation that seemed to seep into my bones. I shivered, the air around me growing colder as I moved deeper into the aisle. My footsteps echoed in the silence, each sound magnified by the empty space. A soft sound, a whisper, like the flutter of a breath, reached my ears, a voice that seemed to come from just beyond the edge of my perception. My heart raced and I looked around, my eyes scanning the shelves for any sign of movement. But the aisle remained empty, the products standing still as sentinels of a bygone era. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. No response came, only the silence that seemed to stretch and twist, an emptiness that held secrets just out of reach. I strained my ears, my senses heightened by the anticipation of the unknown. And then, with a sudden jolt, a faint rustling, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere within the store. I followed the sound, my steps hesitant, my heart pounding. The rustling grew louder, its source seemingly just around the corner. I turned into another aisle, my breath catching in my throat as I saw movement. Objects shifting on the shelves, as if moved by an unseen hand. I stepped closer, my gaze fixed on the shelves, a mixture of fear and wonder coursing through me. The products seemed to rearrange themselves, as if responding to a presence that I could not see. A sensation of being watched washed over me, a feeling that I was not alone in the store. And then, with a sudden rush of air, a display at the end of the aisle toppled over, its contents crashing to the ground. I jumped back, my heart racing, my mind trying to make sense of the inexplicable events unfolding before me. A whisper, a soft, almost melodic sound reached my ears once again, the words unintelligible yet laden with a sense of urgency. I looked around, my eyes darting from shelf to shelf, as if hoping to catch a glimpse of the source of the voice. The air seemed to grow heavier, as if charged with an energy that I couldn't comprehend. The products on the shelves swayed, their movement unexplained by any logical means. And then, with a sudden jolt, a figure materialized before me, a figure that seemed to shimmer and shift, as if it was made of mist. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible in the stillness. The figure reached out towards me, its form indistinct yet captivating. It seemed to flicker in and out of existence, a presence that defied explanation. Its touch, an icy breeze against my skin, sent a shiver down my spine, as if its presence had reached beyond the boundaries of the physical world. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure dissipated, its form fading into the air like smoke. The store grew still once more, the whispers and movements coming to an abrupt halt. I stood alone in the store, my heart still racing, my mind reeling from the encounter. The place that had once been a hub of activity and commerce had become a realm of mystery, a space where the boundary between the seen and the unseen blurred. As I left the store behind, the door chiming softly as I exited, I couldn't shake the feeling that the presence I had encountered was not a remnant of the past, but something far more enigmatic. The abandoned store had become a place where the line between reality and the unknown was thin, a reminder that even in the most mundane of places, the echoes of the unseen can still be heard by those willing to listen.